Have you ever wondered why Indian immigrants are some of the richest people in America? It's not just a stereotype, it's backed by numbers. The average US household makes about $74,000 a year, but for Indian Americans, that number skyrockets to nearly $150,000. That's almost double the national average, and higher than almost every other immigrant group. So, how did this happen? Is it all about education, immigration policies, a relentless work ethic, or maybe a community that knows how to turn small opportunities into big wealth? In this video, we are going to break it all down, from the history that shaped Indian migration, to the cultural values that drive success, to the business strategies and networks that keep wealth growing across generations. By the end, you'll see exactly why the Indian dream and the American dream have become so closely intertwined. Stick around, because this story is bigger than just money. It's about how an immigrant community reshaped the idea of success in America. When you look at the numbers, the success of Indian immigrants in America is staggering. The median household income across the United States sits at about $74,000 a year. But for Indian Americans, that number jumps to over $150,000. That's not just a small difference, it's nearly double the national average. This wealth translates into other markers of success. Indian Americans have some of the highest rates of home ownership among immigrant groups, and an overwhelming majority hold at least a bachelor's degree. In fact, about 70% of Indian adults in America are college graduates, compared to just over 30% for the US population overall. That education pipeline feeds directly into high-paying professions: medicine, law, finance, engineering, and especially the tech industry. Consider this: Indians make up just over 1% of the US population, yet their visibility in elite professions is extraordinary. About 1 in every 7 doctors in the United States is of Indian origin. In Silicon Valley, Indian engineers are so dominant that companies often build recruitment pipelines straight from Indian universities. And at the very top of corporate America, you see leaders like Sundar Pichai at Google, Satya Nadella at Microsoft, Shantanu Narayan at Adobe, and Arvind Krishna at IBM, all Indian-born. CEOs running some of the biggest companies on the planet. The numbers get even more interesting when you compare Indian immigrants to other high-achieving groups. Historically, East Asian immigrants like Chinese and Koreans were considered the model minority. They too have strong educational and professional outcomes. But even within that framework, Indians stand out, often posting higher incomes, higher degrees, and greater representation in leadership roles. This raises the big question: why? What unique combination of history, culture, and policy pushed Indians to the very top of the American immigrant ladder? To understand today's success, you have to rewind the clock. The earliest waves of Indian migration to the US began in the early 1900s, with Punjabi farmers settling in California's agricultural regions. These pioneers faced labor conditions, and their numbers were tiny. In fact, immigration laws in the early 20th century specifically restricted Asian immigration, and Indians were largely shut out. Everything changed in 1965, with the passage of the Immigration and Nationality Act. This landmark law abolished the old quota system that heavily favored Europeans and instead prioritized skilled workers and family reunification. The United States was in desperate need of doctors, engineers, and scientists to fuel its growing economy, and India just happened to have an abundance of exactly that talent. This is when the so-called brain drain began. In the 1970s through the 1990s, tens of thousands of India's best-trained doctors, engineers, and scientists migrated to America. For the US, it was a perfect match. A developing country with limited opportunities was producing highly educated graduates, and America was ready to absorb them into its booming economy. Over time, these professionals not only established themselves but also began sponsoring family members, building community networks, and laying the foundation for the prosperity we see today. What began as a small, struggling group of Punjabi farmers had, within just a few generations, transformed into one of the wealthiest and most influential immigrant communities in the country. Behind the impressive statistics lies something deeper: culture. For Indian families, education isn't just important, it's sacred. In many households, academic achievement is seen as the ultimate way to honor your parents and uplift your entire family. A doctor, engineer, or scientist isn't just a career choice, it's a badge of respect and social mobility. This mindset comes from India's own environment, where competition is unbelievably fierce. Entrance exams for elite institutions like the LITs, Indian Institutes of Technology, or top medical schools attract millions of applicants for just a few thousand spots. Students spend years preparing, often studying 12 to 14 hours a day. This system, while brutal, produces young people who are highly disciplined, extremely resilient, and accustomed to working under pressure, qualities that translate perfectly into the American workforce. Another cultural trait is the deep respect for teachers and elders. In Indian tradition, the guru or teacher is almost as revered as God. This respect builds a sense of humility and discipline, qualities employers value. And let's not forget sacrifice. Many Indian parents willingly work long hours, live frugally, and save aggressively so their children can focus fully on education and career success. Language also plays a big role. Most Indian immigrants grow up speaking multiple languages, including English, Hindi, and often a regional tongue. This multilingual adaptability makes it easier for them to integrate into American society, switch cultural codes, and succeed in global workplaces. Even marriage plays into success. The much-debated arranged marriage system often emphasizes compatibility in values, education, and family goals. This creates couples who pool resources, support each other's careers, and enjoy relatively low divorce rates compared to the US average. That family stability provides a strong foundation for building wealth. Finally, religion and philosophy shape the mindset. Whether Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, or Christian, Indian traditions emphasize hard work, perseverance, and patience. The idea that life is a marathon, not a sprint, fits perfectly with the long, grinding path of success in America. If culture is the soil, education is the seed, and it's the single biggest driver of Indian American success. Over 70% of Indian immigrants in the US hold at least a bachelor's degree, one of the highest percentages of any ethnic group. Compare that to just 32% of the general US population, and the gap is crystal clear. This academic achievement extends into graduate education as well. A huge proportion of international students in American universities are Indian, particularly in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. These are the exact fields that dominate America's high-paying industries. Indians excel in math and coding from an early age, so by the time they reach Silicon Valley or Wall Street, they're already primed to thrive. The US visa system reinforces this trend. Indians dominate the H-1B visa program, which brings in highly skilled foreign workers. In fact, Indians account for nearly 70% of all H-1B approvals each year. That means the majority of skilled immigrants fueling America's tech and healthcare sectors are from India. Back home, Indian parents invest heavily in private tutoring, after-school, coaching, and preparation for exams. Education is seen as the ultimate social elevator, and when families migrate to the US, they carry that same mindset forward. This creates a second generation of Indian Americans who often outperform their already successful parents, attending Ivy League schools, excelling in research, and entering leadership roles. For many Indian families, education is not negotiable. It's the golden ticket that unlocks the American dream. Once education opens the door, Indians don't just enter the American workforce, they dominate it. Medicine is a prime example. Today, nearly 1 in every 7 doctors in the US is of Indian origin. Hospitals across the country rely on Indian-trained physicians, many of whom first arrived during the 1970s and 1980s when America faced a shortage of healthcare professionals. In technology, the story is even more dramatic. Silicon Valley has become almost synonymous with Indian talent. The CEOs of Google, Microsoft, IBM, and Adobe are all Indian-born, a remarkable concentration of power in some of the most influential companies in the world. Indian professionals rise quickly because they combine strong technical expertise with the ability to adapt to different workplace cultures. But it's not just the elite. Across the country, Indian immigrants emphasize saving, investing, and entrepreneurship. They're known for living below their means, pooling family resources, and reinvesting ventures. A classic example is the motel industry, often referred to as the Patel Motel Cartel. Gujarati families, many with the surname Patel, now control a majority of budget motels in the US. What began as a way for immigrants with limited options to survive has become a billion-dollar industry. Professional communities also reinforce this dominance. Indian doctors form medical associations, tech workers form professional networks, and entrepreneurs create chambers of commerce. These networks not only provide support but also multiply opportunities for the next generation. From hospitals to boardrooms to small-town motels, Indian immigrants have carved out an ecosystem of success across multiple industries. Another crucial piece of the puzzle is US immigration policy itself. When the United States opened its doors in 1965 to skilled professionals, Indian doctors and engineers were among the first to step through. America had a shortage of healthcare workers and scientists. India had a surplus of highly educated talent. The match was almost too perfect. Over the years, the H-1B visa system cemented this trend. Designed to attract skilled foreign workers, the program quickly became dominated by Indians. Today, nearly 70% of all H-1B visas go to Indian nationals. That means when you picture a skilled immigrant working in Silicon Valley, chances are they're Indian. This wave of highly educated professionals created a ripple effect through chain migration. Once one family member established themselves, they could sponsor relatives, who in turn built strong networks in medicine, tech, finance, and business. What started as a trickle became a self-sustaining flow of talent and community. The tech boom of the 2000s only amplified this. Indian IT giants like Infosys, Wipro, and Tata Consultancy Services became pipelines feeding thousands of software engineers into the US economy. These companies not only provided cheap outsourcing for American corporations but also gave countless Indians a pathway into high-paying jobs abroad. Ironically, the green card backlog created its own form of stability. Because Indian immigrants faced decades-long waits for permanent residency, they couldn't move around freely or take big risks. Instead, they doubled down, buying homes, investing in their children's education, and committing to long-term careers in the US. What was meant to slow immigration ended up embedding Indian families even more deeply into the American middle and upper class. But Indians didn't stop at just working high-paying jobs. They turned into entrepreneurs and empire builders. In fact, Indian Americans are among the most successful immigrant entrepreneurs in the US. Founders of billion-dollar startups include people of Indian origin behind companies like Sun Microsystems, Instacart, Scalar, and even major roles in Stripe. The entrepreneurial spirit runs deep. It's not just at the tech elite level. Across the country, Indians own and operate small businesses like gas stations, motels, convenience stores, and restaurants. Gujaratis, in particular, became synonymous with the motel industry, controlling over half of all budget motels in the United States. Known as the Patel Motel Cartel, these families pooled resources, lived frugally, reinvested profits, and slowly built nationwide empires. The strategy is simple but powerful. Save aggressively, avoid unnecessary luxuries, and reinvest every possible dollar into growing the business. This mindset is partly shaped by conditions in India, where risk tolerance is higher because survival often depends on entrepreneurial hustle. That cultural DNA carries over to America, making Indians more willing to work long hours, take calculated risks, and bet on themselves. And while their businesses are deeply rooted in local communities, Indians also adopt a think global, act local approach. They use their worldwide networks, family in India, tech hubs in Bangalore, cousins in London or Dubai, to expand business opportunities beyond American borders. It's entrepreneurship on a global scale, anchored by frugality and family trust. Finally, none of this would be possible without the community effect. Indian immigrants rarely succeed in isolation. They succeed as part of a network. Across the US, temples, gurdwaras, mosques, churches, and cultural associations don't just serve religious or social functions. They act as support hubs for newcomers, job postings, mentorship, investment, opportunities, even marriage alliances flow through these networks. Financial support also comes from within. Many Indian communities use rotating credit associations or informal lending circles, where families pool money to give each other lump sums for business investments. This communal financing system has helped countless immigrants buy their first motel, open a store, or invest in property. The culture also pushes children into high-status professions. Parents often encourage, or let's be honest, pressure their kids to become doctors, lawyers, engineers, or IT professionals. While this can feel suffocating, it creates predictable pipelines into stable, high-paying fields. Mentorship is another major advantage. New arrivals don't have to start from scratch. They are guided by Indian professionals who came before them. Whether it's a medical resident helping a new doctor navigate hospital systems, or a software engineer coaching a junior recruit, This cycle of mentorship keeps the ladder of success sturdy. And then there's the collective reputation effect. Over time, Indian professionals built such a strong reputation for competence, hard work, and reliability that employers began to expect excellence from them. That positive bias opens more doors, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where today's success makes tomorrow's opportunities even greater. Behind every statistic and business story lies a powerful psychology. For many Indian immigrants, success isn't optional, it's survival. When families first arrive in America, they often work long hours and multiple jobs just to get established. Sacrifice becomes a way of life. Parents give up luxuries, skip vacations, and save every possible dollar so their children can have better opportunities. Failure, in this cultural context, carries a heavy weight. In India, academic and career achievements are deeply tied to family honor. That shame of failure travels across oceans, driving many Indian Americans to push harder than their peers. Add to that the powerful pressure to make parents proud, and you get a generation of children who feel it's their duty to succeed in school, work, and life. Compared to many native-born Americans, immigrants often feel they have more to prove. They're outsiders trying to secure their place in society. That urgency translates into longer work hours, higher academic performance, and relentless ambition. And within the diaspora itself, the community comparison effect plays a big role. When your neighbor's kids are doctors, engineers, or Ivy League graduates, you naturally feel the push to match or surpass that standard. This mindset, while sometimes stressful, creates an extraordinary engine for achievement. It's not just about making money, it's about proving yourself worthy of the sacrifice your parents made to cross oceans. But let's pause here, because not every Indian immigrant fits into this narrative of prosperity. Not all Indians are rich. Thousands drive taxis, work in restaurants, or struggle in low-wage jobs. Many lack the advanced degrees or professional connections that fuel upward mobility. Their stories are often overshadowed by the model minority myth. And even among the successful, there are challenges. The extreme pressure on children to achieve can lead to stress, burnout, and mental health struggles. Kids grow up balancing two worlds, traditional Indian expectations at home and American social pressures outside, and sometimes that weight is too heavy. The green card backlog is another major issue. Skilled workers from India often wait decades for permanent residency, creating uncertainty for families who have lived in the US for most of their lives. This limbo can be emotionally draining, even for high earners. There's also growing criticism of the model minority stereotype. While Indian Americans are praised for their success, that praise sometimes masks real struggles, and it can pit minority communities against each other. Finally, within the community, there are class divides. The IIT and IIM elite who land high-paying jobs in Silicon Valley live very different lives than working-class immigrants hustling in small businesses. The diaspora is far from monolithic, and any true story has to recognize these divides. Statistics are powerful, but stories bring them to life. Take, for example, a doctor couple in New Jersey. They arrived in the 1980s with little more than medical degrees and ambition. 2 decades later, they owned a home, put their kids through Ivy League schools, and built a life of financial security. Or consider the Gujarati motel family. Starting with one rundown property in a small town, they worked around the clock, reinvested every profit, and expanded over the years. Today, their children run a chain of hotels across multiple states. Then there's the story of a tech worker on an H-1B visa. 4 years, he lived in uncertainty, unable to change jobs freely due to visa restrictions. But he turned that challenge into motivation, launching a startup that eventually attracted investors, and today, he's a millionaire entrepreneur. And of course, the second-generation success stories. Kids of immigrants who grew up straddling two cultures, went to Ivy League universities, and now work in venture capital, politics, or media. Their story isn't just about replicating their parents' success, it's about expanding influence into new arenas. These stories remind us that behind every income statistic is a family, a struggle, and a dream slowly being realized. So what makes Indians unique compared to other immigrant groups? Chinese and Korean immigrants also emphasize education. Nigerian immigrants in the US are also high achievers, with high rates of advanced degrees. Mexican immigrants bring unmatched entrepreneurial energy and resilience. But Indians combine 3 critical advantages: English fluency, education, and timing. English gave them a head start in integration. Education gave them the credentials to enter high-paying sectors. And timing, arriving just. When America needed tech and healthcare talent, put them in the right place at the right moment. There are lessons here for everyone. Invest in education, build strong community networks, support family stability, and reinvest profits instead of spending them. These values, while rooted in Indian culture, are universal recipes for long-term success. Globally, the rise of Indian Americans is also reshaping power dynamics. Today, they are not just workers or business owners, they are CEOs, scientists, and policymakers influencing the direction of America itself. Looking ahead, the future of Indian wealth in America looks bright. The second generation is branching into politics, law, media, and venture capital, expanding beyond the traditional STEM and medical paths. Figures like Vice President Kamala Harris symbolize this widening influence. But there are risks. Assimilation may dilute the intense community pressure that drove the first wave of success. The green card backlog remains a thorn in the side of many families. And economic shifts, automation, AI, or changing immigration policies could alter opportunities for future generations. Still, the trajectory is clear. Indian Americans will likely remain one of the wealthiest and most influential immigrant groups in the United States. Their story is not just about individual ambition, but about how culture, history, and community converge to create extraordinary outcomes. And maybe the most powerful takeaway is this: the Indian dream and the American dream have merged. Together, they are redefining what success in America looks like, not just for Indians, but for immigrants everywhere.